Good morning, everybody. I'm Tarhaka, and today we'll be dealing with part 7. We're going to be dealing with these foreclosures, and we're also going to be dealing with the solution to the problem of people losing their homes and not knowing what to do about it. We're going to show you the problem as it exists among our people, and then we're going to give you some solutions. Now, we've covered a lot of this stuff in previous broadcasts, but today we're going to put the documents up so you can see with the instructions and all that. Keep in mind, in order to get a hold of us for some more information, you go to www.newdebtelimination.com, and you can also go to www.tarhakadebtelimination.org. That's Tarhaka, www.newdebtelimination.com, and tarhakadebtelimination.org. Okay. Before we start, let me bring in then, because I know on my radio broadcast you heard me talk about CTFO in the hemp products, and this is what they look like here. And I use this on a regular basis. CTFO. This is a hemp oil product. This is 500 milligrams. I just take a little bit of this and put it under your tongue. And if you got any joint pain or something like that, you can actually rub it in. But I don't give it a chance. I don't give nothing a chance to make me sick. I ain't got time for that. So I use this on a daily basis. And it's issued by a company called CTFO. CTFO is booming. And you can get this on automatic, where they'll ship it to you monthly. And you can put it in your food, you can put it on your drinks, you can rub it on your skin. But I just put a few drops under my tongue and I'm ready to roll. But anyway, part 7. And let's rock and roll, y'all. Let's go. Okay, let's go over this again. I know y'all have been through this over and over, but based on the stuff that we're reading and the videos and stuff that is going to be a part of part 7 of this particular video that we're doing, let's go over this thing one more time. U.S. person is a corporation. This shows you that U.S. person is a corporation or a franchise or other legal fiction. Why? Because this federal law refers to a U.S. person as it. Are you it? So it seems to me that this gives you a valid reason not to identify as a U.S. citizen, but at the best as the authorized representative of it. Okay, as this gentleman states, 26 CFR, Chapter 1, Part 301, 301-6109, 1, identifying numbers, requirement to furnish one's own number. U.S. persons, every U.S. person who makes under this title return statement or other document must furnish his own taxpayer identification number as required by the forms and the accompanying instructions. All right, we'll go on with that. This part of CFR is encoded in the Title 26 U.S. Code 6109, identifying numbers, a supplying of identifying numbers when required by regulations prescribed by the Secretary. Inclusion in returns. Any person required under the authority of title to make a return statement or other documents such identifying numbers as may be prescribed for securing proper identification of such person. Now that is worded differently, but if anyone ever tells you that U.S. Code replaced CFR, you can tell them that Title 26 is not positive law, as such can be rebutted with older legislation of Congress which hasn't been repealed. So you're rebutting it with a 26 CFR 301-6109. Okay. So basically, if anyone wants you to identify as a U.S. citizen, you can tell them that if you ID'd as that person in the past, it was a mistake and that you're not it. You're not it. So at best, you're an authorized representative for that corporate person. And what's your authority for that? You were issued, i.e. signed and SSN, Social Security number, or the taxpayer identification number. Now, being an AR doesn't remove your liability to pay your straw man's bills, fines, and taxes, but authorized representatives aren't bodily responsible. They should have no authority to hold you. In other words, this could be our stay out of jail card. So if they are eager to charge you with some jailable offense, they can do it under common law and the laws of the Republic. And if they're unwilling to do that, that's their problem. So you now have valid reason to sign everything as an authorized representative for the all caps corporate name. I mean, just because you used to identify yourself as someone in the past doesn't mean that you remain that someone forever. Things change. For a long time you were a boy or girl, but doesn't mean that you are still that, does it? Okay, we're going to stop right here. And we're going to get down into these videos and look at some of this stuff. We're going to deal with the CAFR accounts, the comprehensive annual financial report, and we're also going to deal with this foreclosure and fraud kind of stuff too. So y'all sit tight, and we're going to be moving on so that we can get this information to the people. There's still a lot of people that don't know this stuff, and this is why, you know, I hate to be seeming redundant, but there are people who simply still don't know it. I mean, they don't know it. As long as the conscious people has been out there, we've been trying to put this information out. We got websites, we on YouTube, we all over there everywhere, but the people, a lot of them still don't know this basic information about the difference between them and their corporate fiction and stuff. And so what I try to do is every so often throw this back out there, and hopefully some new individual may see this here and consider it. Okay? All right. Let's move on. All right, here's an article entitled, "Do you own your children?" I think that's a fair enough question. Do you know who owns your child? Now, most of us are under the impression that, you know, I brought a child in the world, this is my child, I own this child, and all of this, but how is it possible for there to be a problem with your child and somebody call the police and say you did something, or the child say, well, my daddy spanked me, and here come child services, and we're going to have to take the children from you. And, you know, what is all of this about? The article states the following. This may seem like a strange question to most, but the answer is even stranger and more terrifying to comprehend. When a question like this is posed, we the people often look to our legislature and our Constitution for the answers. As esoteric and interpretable as those answers may be, but without the rose-colored glasses, we can actually read with our own eyes what the answer to this question is from the eyes and opinion of our government. Before you can truly attain the answer to this question, though, and comprehend how it applies to you and your children, you might first temporarily suspend your emotion, your idealism, and your beliefs. For when we refer to law, these things do not apply, and when it is a corporation that writes these laws, morals, ethics, and values go out the window. Oh man, well, let's get down into the meat and potatoes of this thing here and see what we got going here. Anger, though, for the purpose of information you are about to receive, is permitted and requested. First of all, let's clarify that what we are about to see is the opinion of the court system. Courts do not offer judgment, only opinion. The justices, not judges, of the Supreme Court as well offer nothing but opinion, which then becomes what the Bar Association considers to be public policy or public opinion. The bar copyrights these opinions, then misleadingly calls it the law. The side effect of being a consenting citizen of the United States, in parentheses, corporation, is that these copyrighted codes are applied to you with what the U.S. Code itself calls prima facie law. Now, we know that prima facie means at first glance. In other words, we'll say you go to a car dealership and you see this car and you say, hey man, I like that car there, I think I'll take that and rent there. And but the car is beautiful, the tires are overall, it's just a brand new paint job, car wash, or what have you. It's shining, nice, beautiful, but guess what? The car don't have an engine in it at all. There's no motor in the vehicle. So we have what's called prima facie evidence. In this case, we're talking about prima facie law. Law which derives its authority from presumed consent. Therefore, all branches of government technically operate under this presumed law, meaning that the consent of the governed is automatically assumed in all legal matters and decisions based on court opinion. This unfortunately applies to all contracts made with or on behalf of the state. Okay, is y'all getting this? Okay, now y'all can go ahead and get mad now if you want, but here it is. I'm laying it out. And one of these contracts is called a marriage license. Oh, here we go. Yours and your spouse's signature on that state-sanctioned and federally registered document signifies a consent-based contract between all three parties. Now wait a minute, three parties. You, your spouse, and the state. Okay, but don't take my word for it. Let's see what the court system offers in their opinion about this subject. First, let's visit an Illinois appellate court judgment from 1997. Appellate Court of Illinois, number 5-97-0108. Marriage is a civil contract to which there are three parties, the husband, the wife, and the state. Van Coten versus Van Coten, 154N-E-146. Continue. When two people decide to get married, they are required to first procure a license from the state. If they have children of this marriage, they are required by the state to submit their children to certain things such as school attendance and vacations. Furthermore, if at some time in the future the couple decides the marriage is not working, they must petition the state for a divorce. Marriage is a three-party contract between the man, the woman, and the state. Linneman versus Linneman, 1 Illinois.app.2D 48-50-116N-E-2D 182-183 in 1953, citing Van Coten versus Coten. The state represents the public interest in the institution of marriage. Okay, and this continues. The public interest is what allows the state to intervene in certain situations to protect the interests of the members of the family. The state is like a silent partner in the family who is not active in the everyday running of the family, but becomes active and exercises its power and authority only when necessarily protect some important interests of the family life. Taking all of this into consideration, the question no longer is whether the state has an interest or place in disputes such as the one at bar, but it becomes a question of timing and necessity. Also, this case law states the state has a wide range of power for limiting potential freedom and authority in things affecting the child's welfare. In fact, the entire familial relationship involves the state. Prince 321U.S. at 167-64S-CT- dot at 442-88L-ED.645. Okay, we're not going to read all of that. Well, now, the court should do seem to offer the opinion that your child is owned by the state. But heck, what should we, the people, not people, expect? With such authority and jurisdiction is just arbitrarily handed over to the bunch of attorneys running around in black muumuus with little wooden hammers yelling that they rule supreme in their houses of judicial worship simply because the state allows them to presume such authority and jurisdiction. I suppose the people who consent to this charade gets just what they deserve, slavery through a bondage contract. Okay, that's pretty much the bottom line, and that is what happened there's a way to get around this situation, and the best way to do it is if they're telling you when you're going to get married, the first thing that's going to happen is where you're going to have to find out where you're going to get married at. A lot of times, well, we're going to get married in the church, and pastor's going to perform the ceremony. But after you say I do and stuff, and you sign a little marriage license, the pastor's going to take that downtown and register it with the state. And presto chango, the state is now officially in your business. They got controlling interest in the offspring of your marriage. In order for you to get a divorce, you got to go to the state and all this. But what if you and your wife decide, look, we're going to write our own marriage vows between each other, and we're going to, the wife will get her side of the family, the husband will get his side of the family, and everybody from both sides of the family sign that document clearly saying that they witnessed a marriage that is not sanctioned or licensed or filed with the state. You have a man and a woman, and there's no contract involved. There's no three-party contract. There's only two parties. You exchange vows. The husband may place the ring on his wife's finger if you decide to do so. The wife places a ring on the husband's finger, and they pronounce each other husband and wife. You got witnesses from both sides. Everybody has signed the book, and that's the end of that. Okay, so when somebody comes around talking about we're going to have to take your children, well, you show me the contract. Okay, but anyway, let me see how far this thing goes. I'm not going to read all of that. I just want to bring this out so you have some food for thought, and we have access to this document, and you can get this. Don't hesitate to go to www.newdebtelimination.com, and we had tons of this kind of information so you can get it right, so you can understand what is going on in your life and in the life of your family. NewDebtElimination.com or TarhakaDebtElimination.org. Okay, we gonna move on, y'all.
I went down to Atlanta wanting to do a story about the thinness of the black middle class. One of the things that's neat about the South before this crisis is it's a place where black folks had managed to start to own homes more than elsewhere in the country. There are old black communities that have been there for generations, and they have, between the public programs that have helped and individual will, they've scraped together and managed to build neighborhoods and communities where you have longtime homeowners. And so we wanted to go look in a place where there was something to lose. Absent home equity, black wealth is 1% of white wealth in America. Home equity is a deep, I mean, there's already a huge wealth gap, but to the degree that the black community has been able to cobble together capital has been through home equity, and it has gone out the window for a whole lot of people. And the vast majority of loans made were refinance loans. Loans that went to people who had owned their property for some time and got flipped through a series of increasingly larger and larger loans that they couldn't afford and that had no benefit whatsoever to them. And they got them into those by going in, preying on people who didn't know any better, telling them this is going to be a good deal for you. Just sign here and it's all going to work out. George Mitchell is typical of folks in his neighborhood, and I should say his neighborhood. You drive through it and it looks like a disaster zone, with the number of boarded up houses or houses that are up on either are bank owned and sitting there. Number of people who have lost their homes, all old families. George Mitchell, 76 years old when he got his first, when he got the last loan. Every penny of the loan went either to pay off the previous loan or to IndyMac's closing costs. Here's a guy who was a mail carrier for 35 years, is retired on Social Security and his pension from that, and is supposed to be making $5,000 a month. That's not a red flag. Here's a guy in a zip code that is well known to be one of the worst hit in the country, and his house is supposed to be worth $125,000. So there's an example of here's a loan that did him absolutely no good. On its face, he had no reason to get. Its only purpose was to create a larger debt volume and a bigger loan that the bank could then sell into the securities market. The depth of the predation is stunning and stands in direct contrast to the national rhetoric around borrower responsibility. The responsibility is very clearly on the lenders here. So there's 250,000 people in foreclosure right now. That's 50% greater than there was this time last year. There are more than 2 million people more than 60 days delinquent on their loans. More than 2 million. Those people are headed into foreclosure. Like George, there are people who were in foreclosure the day they signed the loan, and it's just a matter of time before they arrive on the auction block. And so you have neighborhoods that were communities, and we've seen throughout history this repeating itself in black neighborhoods where they were communities, and that community is a living organism that is more than just a collection of houses and more than just a collection of people. And after it gets gutted, that has an echo effect on people's lives. Sooner or later, we're going to have to come up with a large-scale plan, in my humble opinion, similar to the one we create the first housing boom in mid-century, to get working-class folks and middle-class folks into loans that make sense.
Many Black Americans never recovered from the financial crisis or the period of time where home values crashed. 43% of homes in Ferguson, Missouri are referred to as seriously underwater when described by RealtyTrack. This is a result of the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act that was passed right after the U.S. began to recover from the financial crisis. The act, of course like many acts passed, favors the rich rather than the poor. This means that homes at lower prices are less protected, which leave many Black Americans in horrific home and financial situations.
Deregulation is the watchword of the last 40 years in this country, 50 years. So
and it's the watchword now.
Right. So are we protected from this? What can we expect for the future?
You want a more definitive answer than the no I gave you?
Yes. I knew it'd be no, because I mean.
No, hell no.
Welcome back to The Real News. I'm Mark Steiner, and we conclude our conversation now with Bill Black, who joins us a great many times here on the Real News Network. And, of course, his book, The Best Way to Rob a Bank is to Own One. Bill, good to have you back. Glad you can stay with us for this. So,
thank you.
So let's talk a bit about what this study showed us and how they did it. And part of the senator's story takes place right here in the city from which we broadcast, Baltimore, Maryland.
Absolutely. And predation, of course, goes back an enormously long time. But as I said, before they deregulated interest rates, which begins basically around 1980, and so it begins in Carter, but it largely implemented under President Reagan. Predation was supercharged as a possibility. And this America being America, the folks that they went after were typically blacks, Latinos, and the elderly, and the combination thereof. So here's the overall conclusion of the study, which is quite correct in my view. In this context, predominantly black and Latino communities shifted from being objects of economic exclusion, in other words, redlining, to targets for financial exploitation, right? So that's the big overall thrust that strikes me as correct. So how did they target? And remember, target means purposeful, right? You can't target something randomly
right.
in this regard. So we done perverse financial incentives. But the loan broker does use something else, and the secondary market sales do use something else. Now, the secondary market sales, once you do the predatory lending, they largely protect the original lenders and certainly the subsequent purchasers from suits involving discrimination. There's this holder in due course doctrine and such. So you get legal protections. So it starts out a discriminatory predatory loan, but you can't go after the people who ultimately end up with the loan, and they get to enforce the loan, even though it was predatory and absolutely slimy. You have no legal defense typically, or at least frequently. Second technique is what we call neutralization, which is you don't feel bad about it. So the report tells us about how you were taught as a lender not to feel bad. You were supposedly helping people buy homes for the first time, right? In all of this. Then they tell us how the system was structured so that there were two channels. One is the prime channel and the other is the subprime channel. Now, blacks would frequently qualify for the prime channel, which had a much lower interest rate. But if you steered the person out of your prime channel to subprime, the subprime guy gave you a kickback of 40 to 50% of his fee because his fee was so big. We're talking about, difference in interest rates of 5%, which in that era were huge. Mm-hmm. So subprime loans, the fees that the bank could get for making these loans were at least double sometimes what they could get in terms of premium when selling it for prime loans. So they love to make the subprime loans, especially to people who are actually prime. Right? What's better than that in these terms? So this channeling tells us mechanically how you'd get it done. Basically, you get trapped. As soon as you were diverted to and made a subprime application, you were doomed. You couldn't change it.
You were stuck in that quagmire.
Right. We talk about affinity fraud. So again, here's the key in fraud, real simple. I get you to trust me, and then I betray your trust to take something of value from you, to give to me. All right? That's what fraud is. And so the hard part is getting you to trust me, and that's why affinity fraud is such a big deal. We find something in common. We're both baseball players. We're both the same religion, or here we're the same race and ethnicity. And it's a lot easier for me to get you to trust me because, hey, one black guy's not going to cheat another black guy, ha, ha, ha. All right? So there isn't just affinity fraud. It turns out there's affinity predation. And this report tells us how that was done. Then there's intersection. I talked about that. It's not just that they go after blacks. They go after blacks who are female and blacks who are elderly females, the quintessential black widow. Then they talk about taking advantage of residential segregation. Originators developed I'm quoting here, developed specialized strategies and marketing materials aimed at identifying black and Latino borrowers as subprime lending marks. Prior research suggests the Latino immigrant households seeking to purchase a home were more susceptible via Spanish-speaking intermediaries. But for blacks, they would find neighborhood stores that catered largely to blacks, and they would find business situations where you took out a high-cost loan. In fact, they would mail you checks that if you cashed them, they weren't giving you a gift, they were giving you a loan, and at a high interest rate. And then they would do a follow-up and say, hey, you're locked into this high interest rate loan that we just gave you. You should come and get a home loan from us. You can consolidate your debts and pay a lower interest rate, right? On top of that, they viewed the black churches as, again, being able to get people to trust. So they approached the pastors, they made charitable contributions, and they held in the church often wealth seminars. Right. Where have we heard this? Right. To get folks. So we see a lot from the study about exactly how it was done. And they say, and I quote again, to gain the trust of these borrowers, originators worked through local social structures and interpersonal networks to enlist trusted intermediaries, such as religious leaders, small business owners, and personnel in community-based organizations, right? They had special word processing so that you could turn it into a document that sounded more like Black English in use in some communities instead of more standardized English and such, right? So they were very clever in these regards, and it isn't random. It was deliberate targeting, and then they used trial and error, and they see what works, right? They have hundreds, thousands of brokers doing this. Well, you know, they're all pitching. They find which pitch works better, and that becomes a standardized script that they teach the new guys and gals how to use. And then someone's an entrepreneur and gets an even better way, right? And so over time, these predations and fraud schemes get better and better. And meanwhile, what's on the other side? Virtually nothing. Nothing at the federal level. Everything at the federal level is literally seeking to undercut the state authorities trying to crack down on this.
So the question becomes, and as we conclude, so are we protected from this now?
No.
I mean, one of the things, I mean, clearly the whole world of banking and making loans and going after poor communities is by its very nature predatory.
Yes.
And it seems deregulation is the watchword of the last 40 years in this country, 50 years. So
and it's the watchword now.
Right. So are we protected from this? What can we expect for the future?
You want a more definitive answer than the no I gave you?
Well, yes. I knew it'd be no, because I mean.
No, hell no.
So we have a lot.
No, we are not protected. No. And under what worldview is the protection going to be for poor blacks and Latinos under Donald Trump and against rich white bankers?
Well, wait a minute. What do you mean? I'm just kidding.
Right. So again, it isn't something terrible that just happened under the second George W. Bush.
Right.
Right? This is something that has been going on since Carter, which is to say the 70s, which is to say we're approaching 50 years of this. Well, it's really time to try a different approach.
I think so. Maybe we can get Jimmy Carter to admit all this and help lead the charge along with Alexandria Cortez in Congress and see if we can get everybody Ocasio-Cortez to come together and really kind of push something that protects.
Well, with Habitat for Humanity, Carter does at least appear to have some idea of guilt and responsibility.
Well, Bill Black, we all learn a great deal. I really appreciate it when you join us here at The Real News, and I look forward to kind of really exploring this in greater depth, because I think it's really important that we kind of lay this out for people to understand graphically and verbally here about what we faced and what we're facing. And thanks so much for your work and your time.
Thank you.
And I'm Mark Steiner here for The Real News Network. We've been with Bill Black, and we have a great deal more to talk about, so keep watching The Real News. Take care.
Fairwood, a quiet subdivision in Maryland's Prince George's County, is one of the richest black neighborhoods in the United States. For families like the Boatangs, who are immigrants from Ghana, buying a house here was closely linked to achieving the American dream.
A friend in our church, who is a housing agent, took us to this neighborhood.
And it was a beautiful community. I mean, I felt, well, this is the place I want my family to live.
And we were excited. I mean, the kids were excited. We're buying a house. Everyone is going to have their room. no more sharing with visitors.
We actually believe that we made the right decision. It was the height of the bubble, because then immediately after that, then there was the bust, and everything was coming down.
There were a lot of things that we didn't know about, until we got in. And at that time, things were going bad. I mean, not only for us, but everybody in the country, everywhere.
A reminder tonight just how fragile the housing market is. 23% of homeowners, nearly 1 in 4, are what's known as underwater on their mortgages, meaning they owe more than their homes are worth.
Since last summer, Americans have seen their investment shrink and their property values plummet.
We are going through the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression.
One of the places hardest hit by the crisis was Fairwood, and like so many others, the Boatengs were severely impacted. Back in 2005, when the mortgage market was thriving, the Boatengs say they were told they could afford a house worth around $617,000. They made all their mortgage payments for about 2.5 years, but they were financed with a subprime loan, which reset to higher payments, often called shock payments. The Boatengs could not afford the higher amount, and during the mortgage crisis they could not refinance. Now, they haven't made a payment in more than 6 years. Also, a few years after moving into the house, Comfort lost her job. Determined to work, she started small businesses she could manage from home.
She loves baking. So during the time when we got all this financial stress, we decided, well, why don't we use the same thing that you love to do as a way to get some income at least?
Every week I sell pastries in front of the church. I do that just to raise some funds, just to help me during the week for gas or a few things. Sometimes it makes you feel kind of down. I mean, I've completed my bachelor's degree, they saw it, and then 2 years later I finished my master's and they saw it, but I encourage myself. Because somehow it looks little, but little drops of water forms a mighty ocean.
Comfort eventually found part-time work in the home healthcare industry and still sells baked goods as well. Her husband Kofi continues to work in information technology, and together they earn about $100,000 a year. But it's not enough to cover their debt, which has grown to nearly $1.4 million. Some of their debt is from student and car loans, and some is from money owed on another property. But the majority is from the Fairwood house, which is now only worth 60% of what they originally bought it for. Distraught by their financial situation, the Boatengs look to their church community for support.
We have prayer sessions, right? Times when we pray, and people bring what their needs are. And over, these people were in the same boat like we were.
Indeed, many of the Boatengs' neighbors have also struggled to keep their homes. In Fairwood, half of the loans made between 2006 and 2007 went bad.
You have all these letters bombarding you, threatening you, having sleepless nights. I mean, everything just came to a standstill.
It's the feeling that you've lost everything.
Despite years of living in limbo, the Boatengs haven't given up. They're now working to get a loan modification and still hope to save their home.
I'm not nervous. I'm just not nervous. Are you nervous?
I'm going with positive thoughts, bringing a positive spirit, positive vibe.
Doug Jeffries is a luxury car salesman.
So the one with the big family?
His wife, Mary, is a high-end real estate broker. But they haven't paid their own mortgage in 2 years, and now they could lose it all. Today, they're headed to a meeting with the housing counselor who's working to save their home.
Do you remember the day you moved in? October 12th, 2002. It was rainy.
Oh, no.
Cold.
Oh, no.
Just the messiest
Oh,
day.
that's terrible.
But it was sunshine in our hearts.
They lived in a 3,500 square foot 4-bedroom home on a corner lot, complete with a 3-car garage for their BMWs.
This is the living room. I'm a girl from Newark, New Jersey. We grew up in a 1-bedroom apartment, and it was 4 girls and 1 boy. So I would always say, oh, I can't wait until I get grown. I'm going to buy the biggest house. I'm going to do this. The pool would probably have been back there, the deck, the pool, and the tennis court.
You don't know what the next person is doing. But I think there's some psychology in the African American community around spending that's connected with having felt less than and wanting to feel as good as.
Let's give God some praise.
The Jeffreys are drowning in the kind of debt their pastor, Buster Soaries, preaches against just about every Sunday.
Live within your means. People that don't manage their money wisely are not managing our lives wisely.
When it comes to bailouts of American business, Barney Frank and the Congress may be just getting started. Nearly $2 trillion tax dollars have been shoveled into the hole that Wall Street dug, and people wonder, where's the bottom? It turns out the abyss is deeper than most people think, because there is a second mortgage shock heading for the economy. In the executive suites of Wall Street and Washington, you're beginning to hear alarm about a new wave of mortgages with strange names that are about to become all too familiar. If you thought subprimes were insanely reckless, wait till you hear what's coming.
What's the future hold? Well, this shows...
One of the best guides to the danger ahead is Whitney Tilson. He's an investment fund manager who's made such a name for himself recently that these investors, who manage about $10 billion, gathered to hear him last week. Tilson saw a year ago that subprime mortgages were just the start.
We had the greatest asset bubble in history, and now that bubble is bursting. The single biggest piece of the bubble is the U.S. mortgage market, and we're probably about halfway through the unwinding and bursting of that bubble. Halfway. It may seem like all the carnage out there, we must be almost finished, but there's still a lot of pain to come in terms of write-downs and losses that have yet to be recognized.
In 2007, Tilson teamed up with Amherst Securities, an investment firm that specializes in mortgages. Amherst had done some financial detective work, analyzing the millions of mortgages that were bundled into those mortgage-backed securities that Wall Street was peddling. It found that the subprimes, loans to the least creditworthy borrowers, were defaulting. But Amherst also ran the numbers on what were supposed to be higher quality mortgages.
And they were frankly terrifying as data we'd never seen before, and that's what made us realize, holy cow, things are going to be much worse than anyone anticipates.
The trouble now is that the insanity didn't end with the subprimes. There were 2 other kinds of exotic mortgages that became popular, called Alt-A's and Option Arms. The option arms, in particular, lured borrowers in with ultra-low initial interest rates, called teaser rates, sometimes as low as 1%. But after 2, 3, or 5 years, those rates reset. They went up, and so did the monthly payment. So a mortgage of, say, $800 a month could easily jump to $1,500. Now the Alt-A and option arm loans made back in the heyday are starting to reset, causing the mortgage payments to go up and homeowners to default.
The defaults right now are incredibly high at unprecedented levels, and there's no evidence that the default rate is tapering off. Those defaults almost inevitably are leading to foreclosures and homes being auctioned and home prices continuing to fall.
What you seem to be saying is that there is a very predictable time bomb effect here.
Exactly. I mean, you can look back at what was written in 05 and 07, you can look at the reset dates, you can look at the current default rates, and it's really very clear and predictable what's going to happen here.
Just look at this projection from the investment bank of Credit Suisse. These are the billions of dollars in subprime mortgages that reset last year and this year. Now look at what hasn't hit yet. The Alt-A and Option Arm resets when homeowners will pay higher interest rates in the next 3 years. We're at the beginning of a second wave. How big is the potential damage from the Alt-A's compared to what we just saw in the subprimes?
Well, the subprime was approaching $1 trillion. The Alt-A is about $1 trillion. And then you have option arms on top of that. That's probably another $500 to $600 billion on top of that.
How many of these option arms would you imagine are going to fail?
Well north of 50%. My gut would be 70% of these option arms will default.
How do you know that?
We know it based on current default rates, and this is before the reset. So people are defaulting even on the little 3% teaser interest-only rates they're being asked to pay today.
That second wave is coming ashore at a place you might call the Repo Riviera, Miami-Dade County. Oscar Munoz used to sell real estate. Now his company clears out foreclosed homes.
Business is just going through the roof for us. Fortunately for us, unfortunately for the poor families who are going through this.
I wonder, do you ever come to houses where the people are still here?
Absolutely. That's really a sad situation. I'd rather not meet the people.
Why not?
It's not easy to come in and move a family out. It's just our job to do it for the bank. It's just the nature of what's going on in the market right now.
What is going on in the market right now? How much work are you getting?
Every day we have 20, 30 assignments.
A day?
A day.
Just your company?
Just our company. And we're one of the few companies right now who are hiring. We have to hire people because the demand is so high.
People who've been evicted tend to leave stuff behind. The next house is usually much smaller. Banks hire Munoz to move the possessions out where, by law, they remain for 24 hours. Often the neighbors pick through the remains. Once the homes are empty, the hard part starts, trying to find buyers in a free-fall market. Miami real estate broker Peter Zalewski talks like a man with a lot of real estate to move.
We have 110,000 properties for sale in South Florida today, 55,000 foreclosures, 19,000 bank-owned properties, 68% of the available inventory is in some form of distress. They need someone to clean it up.
What's the name of your company?
It's called Condo Vultures Realty.
What does that mean?
That in times of distress, in times of downturn, there's opportunity. And, vultures are clean up the mess. A lot of people seem to think they kill, but they don't actually kill, they clean.
The killing in Miami was done by the developers back when it seemed that the party would never end. They sold hyper-inflated condos at what amounted to real estate orgies, sales parties for invited guests who were armed with option arm and Alt-A loans.
There were red ropes outside. They had hired cameramen and they had hired photographers to almost set the scene of a paparazzi.
They were hiring fake paparazzi to make the customers feel like they were special.
You were selling a lifestyle.
What role did these exotic mortgages play, these Alt-A's and the option arms?
They were essential. They were necessary. Without the Alt-A or option arm mortgage, this boom never would have occurred.
It never would have occurred because without the Alt-A's and the option arms, many buyers never would have qualified for a loan. The banks and the brokers were getting their money up front in fees, so the more they wrote, the more they made.
They stopped checking whether the income was even real. They turned to low and no doc loans, so-called liar's loans, and jokingly referred to as ninja loans. No income, no job, no assets, and they were still willing to lend.
But help me out here. How does that make sense for the lender? It would seem to be reckless in the extreme.
It was, but the key assumption underlying the willingness to do this was that home prices would keep going up forever. And in fact, home prices nationwide had never declined since the Great Depression.
On the way up, everyone wanted in. No one expected to feel any pain. People like acupuncturist Rula Giosmas became real estate speculators. How many properties did you buy in this last 5-year period?
I believe in the last 5-year period I bought about 6 properties.
And what did you buy them for?
For investments.
She says she put 20% down on each. Now they're all financed with option arm loans. What did you understand about the loans?
Well, unfortunately, I didn't ask too many questions. I mean, in the old days, I would shop around, but because of the frenzy, and I was so busy looking to buy other properties. I didn't really focus on shopping around for mortgage brokers.
But if you're investing in real estate, you're buying multiple properties, you should be asking a lot of questions.
Yeah.
Why didn't you ask?
I was busy. I was really busy looking at property all the time, all day long.
Did you read the paperwork?
No, I didn't.
Now she's losing money on every property. You know that there are people watching this interview who are saying, you know, she was just foolish. She was greedy and foolish. She was buying small apartment buildings and wasn't paying enough attention to how they were financed.
My full-time job is I'm an acupuncturist. So this was just a side thing.
You're an acupuncturist, but you got stuck in real estate.
Yeah.
Geosma says she was misled and she hopes to renegotiate her loans. But many other buyers have simply walked away from their properties. This Miami luxury building was a sellout, but when we visited, a quarter of the condos were in foreclosure. What did this place go for?
This was originally purchased in October of 2006 for $2.4 million.
$2.4 million? What's it worth now?
The asking price from the lender is $939.
So it lost $1.5 million in value in a couple of years?
It was a tough 2 years.
And there are tough years to come, because just like the subprimes, the Alt-A and option arm mortgages were bundled into Wall Street securities and sold to investors. In a nutshell, 2009 looks like what to you?
Miserable.
2010?
Miserable, even worse.
Sean Egan runs a credit rating firm that analyzes corporate debt. Fortune magazine cited Egan as one of 6 Wall Street pros who predicted the fall of the financial giants. This next wave of defaults, which everyone agrees is inevitably going to happen, how central is that to what happens to the rest of the economy?
It's core. It's core because housing is such an important part. We're not going to get the housing industry back on track until we clear out this garbage that's in there.
That hasn't cleared out yet.
In fact,
we haven't seen the bottom.
It's getting worse.
What do you mean?
There are some statistics from the National Association of Realtors, and they track the supply of housing units on the market, and that's grown from 2.2 million units about 3 years ago up to 4.5 million units earlier this year. So you have the massive supply out there of units that need to be sold.
Well, with the housing supply increasing that much, what does it mean?
It means that this problem, the economic difficulties, are not going to be resolved in a short period of time. It's not going to take 6 months. It's not going to take 12 months. We're looking at probably about 3, 4, or 5 years before this overhang, the supply overhang, is worked through.
In the next 4 years, 8 million American families are expected to lose their homes. But even after the residential meltdown, Whitney Tilson says blows to the financial system will keep coming.
The same craziness that occurred in the mortgage market occurred in the commercial real estate markets, and that's taking a little longer to show, but there are going to be big losses there. Credit cards, auto loans, you name it. So we're maybe halfway through the mortgage bubble, but we may only be in the third inning of the overall bursting of this asset bubble.
Does that mean that the stock market is going to continue plunging as we've seen the last several months?
Actually, we're the most bullish we've been in 10 years of managing money, and the reason is because the stock market, for the first time, I can say this in years, has finally figured out how bad things are going to be, and the stock market is forward-looking. And with U.S. stocks down nearly 50% from their highs, we're actually finding bargains galore. We think corporate America is on sale.
The stock market will still have a lot of figuring to do, with more troubling news on the horizon. The Mortgage Bankers Association says 1 out of 10 Americans is now behind on their mortgage. That's the most since they started keeping records in 1979.
A. Well, this is a promissory note.
Is there an agreement between Mr. Smith, the borrower, and the defendant?
Yes.
Do you believe the agreement includes a lender and a borrower?
Yes. I'm the lender and Mr. Smith is the borrower.
What do you believe the agreement is?
We have the borrower sign the note and we give the borrower a check.
Does this agreement show the words borrower, lender, loan, interest, credit, or money within the agreement?
Sure it does.
According to your knowledge, who or was it returned as a bank loan to the borrower?
As a loan.
So how did the bank get the borrower's money for free?
That's how it works.
No more questions, Your Honor. All right, so there you have it. I think we've beaten that dead horse quite sufficiently, and the fraud should now be crystal clear.
Okay. After watching what we just seen involving the foreclosures and people losing their homes, and we want to deal with some solutions to the problem. What we're looking at right now is called a UCC financing statement. We want to put this thing together and keep in mind that it has all of the instructions that you're going to need to fill this thing out correctly. We've in previous videos we've dealt with the straw man and all capital letters and what it means, and we know he's the one that has all of the assets, all of the control, all the property. He owns everything, and what we want to do is transfer all that he owns into the hands of the living man. Okay? And this is the statement that we're going to use. Now, if you notice right here, the most important part of this is right here, so there's absolutely no excuse. Instructions for UCC financing statement, form UCC1. And it says, please type or laser print this form. Be sure it's completely legible. Read and follow all instructions, especially instructions 1. Use of the correct name for the debtor is crucial. Fill in the form very carefully. Mistakes may have important legal consequences. If you have questions, consult an attorney. The filing office cannot send completed form or any attachments to the filing office with the requirement fee. It says items, instructions, A and B. Well, I'm not going to read all of the instructions, but here they are, attached to your UCC1 financing statement. So you don't have to call anyone. All you have to do is follow instructions that is right there on the statement itself. Okay, this is a standard UCC1 financing statement. You're well on your way to the solution to the problem you want to take, because see, everything that you do is attached to your straw man. If you are buying a home, it's going to be addressed to the straw man. If you open up a bank account, it's the straw man. It's Social Security is the straw man. Anytime you're going to court, if you go into jail, it's always the straw man, and you are going along for the ride. Well, instead of being a beneficiary, why don't we start being the grantor and assign trustees to manage your estate? And you, the man, you actually putting in the work, but when you get a job someplace, they're addressing you as a straw man. You get a paycheck, it's addressed to the straw man in all caps. So this is how to go about taking control of that and getting in a position so that we can discharge these so-called debts and all this stuff. And we're going to be getting to that in subsequent videos. But right now, we're starting with a solution to the problems of the videos that we just watched involving people losing their homes and all of this kind of stuff here. Keep in mind, in order to get this thing done correctly and to succeed and change your life, you can contact us at newdebtelimination.com. That's newdebtelimination.com. And you can also go to tarhakadebtelimination.org. Okay, let's move on to the next document. This is a security agreement. This is security agreement, this agreement dated of this day, and it shows you what that looked like. And keep in mind on your UCC1 finances statement, it has a place for you to list the secured party. And we've already covered some of what a secured party is briefly in previous videos, but of course we have detailed information and stuff. So you can just contact us at newdebtelimination.com. If you take a look at this document, this is what it looks like. So the UCC means the Uniform Commercial Code is adopted and enacted and as in effect from time to time in the state of whatever your state is. Time used them here, and we're not going to read all of this, but I want you to see what a security agreement. Now, for those of you who have your trust established, you remember we talked about the irrevocable common law trust. In fact, that's the only trust that I recommend. There are all types of trusts, and of course you can put one trust into another trust. We want to make sure that we remain in the private and operate in the private. We want to learn how to maneuver and operate and move and have our being in the private. Okay? All right, so I want you to see what this thing looks like. This is a security agreement. When you begin to deal with your assets and stuff, and you got your trust established. And also keep in mind that if you have a trust established, everybody in that trust, especially born inside the United States, has the potential to take advantage of their straw man, but you're just simply operating as a single trust unit. Now you have the power to fund the trust, because so often I hear people say, well, you know, how are we going to fund the trust? Well, they had the money all along, but anyway, I had the power and the credit and all that all along, but but anyway, I just want to bring this out as a solution to the problems that we're looking at with the people in the videos that we just watched that are losing their home and going through all of this stuff. And, same thing with your child support, student loans, and all of this stuff. Okay, this is your security agreement. Okay, let's move on, y'all. Okay, everybody, you've seen the problem, and you have examined the solution to the problem, or some of the part of the solution to the problem. And so now we're going to go into the Comprehensive Financial Annual Report. It's called the CAFR, and we're going to deal with that. Keep in mind with CTFO, you also get your free website and free back office. Okay? All right. So without further ado, let's go down into the CAFR, and let's make sure that you pay close attention. And in order to deal with the CAFR successfully, you're going to have to get in touch with your city officials and demand to look at the books. But let's go and let's see how this thing here is going to play out. Hold on 1 second. All right, we got that straight. All right, y'all, let's roll. This document is the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. It's by Walter J. Bruin Jr. Now, I was told to go to this site by Mr. Jerry Day, and it states here by Mr. Bruin that as editor of the Anti-Shyster, I've seen so many unbelievable stories over the last 8 years that I've been become jaded, cynical, and worldly. There are no surprises left for me. I'm sure I've seen it all. I've thought so for several years, and generally speaking, about every 2 or 3 months, life proves me absolutely wrong by showing me another story so awesome that I'm left almost speechless. This article introduces another one of those stories so awesome that it's right off the Richter scale. All right, let's scroll down and see what this guy's talking about. Walter Buren Jr. worked as a Wall Street commodity trader for 15 years, but now resides in Arizona. According to Mr. Bruin, every state, county, and major metropolitan city is keeping 2 sets of books. One set, the budget, is commonly available and tracks each government entity's costs and tax revenue. The budget is the financial record that's seen by the public and used by politicians to justify new government services and higher taxes. Okay, now that's the budget. However, there's a second set of books called the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, or CAFR, which is virtually unknown to the public but contains the real records of total governmental income. According to Mr. Buren, although the budget gives an accurate account of government cost, only the CAFR gives an accurate account of government's income. For example, while a particular, let's go back up here, state budget might report receiving $20 billion in taxes, just barely enough to sustain its $20 billion cost, the CAFR might reveal the state's real income in the neighborhood of $60 billion. 3 times as much as reported on the budget. If these allegations are accurate, the particular state could stop charging all the taxes we are familiar with, and not only survive, but either double the amount of reported government services or give every citizen a huge tax rebate. Okay, let's see, this is interesting. The implications are mind-blowing. It did mean our world is so different from what we are led to believe, so much more corrupt than ever, I suspect, that we are left with 3 choices. Either 1, government agrees to end the deception and stop overtaxing, or 2, the American people agree to accept their status as slaves, or 3, both sides refuse to agree and participate a shooting revolution. The issue is that big. Wow. But are Mr. Bruin's allegations correct? How could any government entity dare to routinely overcharge its citizens by 200%, underreport its income by 2/3, and knowingly press for high taxes based on an inaccurate budget? Worse, how could such a fraudulent system become widespread among all states, counties, big cities, and even the federal government? When you stop to think about it, Mr. Bruin's allegations are too fantastic to be credible. All right, let's go up here and we're going to see. Nevertheless, I talked to Mr. Bruin by phone for several hours and found him to be articulate, knowledgeable, and apparently sincere. I asked a retired professor of economics to interview Mr. Bruin and evaluate his allegations. The professor's assessment and evaluate his allegations. The professor's assessment. Bruin is probably correct. I steered an Alaskan MD who is also a dedicated constitutionalist researcher. To Mr. Bruin, the doctors subsequently found evidence supporting Mr. Bruin's claims. Wow. The state of Alaska and the city of Anchorage both use budget, CAFR, accounting systems that conceal a breathtaking difference in reported revenue. Another researcher in Wyoming claims that a comparison of his state budgets and CAFR also supports Mr. Bruin's arguments. In every case, there are two sets of books, and the income reported on the budget is millions of billions of dollars less than is reported on the CAFR. Amazing. Does this support prove Mr. Bruin's extraordinary allegations? No, but they lend enough evidence to publish his allegations to a broader audience who will do more research to confirm, refute, or refine those allegations. What follows is an amalgam of statements or implications raised by Mr. Bruin on our telephone conversation, Tom Valentine's radio interview, Mr. Bruin's email, and article on Mr. Bruin's written by Betsy Ross. Okay, let's get down into it and see what this thing is all about here. We're going to see what you found. Okay, Mr. Bruin reports first discovering the CAFR report in New Jersey in 1989 when he helped start a New Jersey tax protest group called Hands Across New Jersey. While involved with a group, Mr. Bruin read in the state's annual budget that the total cost of all public services was $17 billion and the net available. The money on the hand to pay the bills was $24.6 billion. But then he asked the first question the IRS asked in any audit: what are the gross receipts? Okay, that's fair enough. So let's see what else he got to talk about. He added figures from various sources and came up with about $44 billion and began to wonder how the state could have a $17 billion in costs, $24.6 billion in cash on hand, and $44 billion annual income. The numbers didn't add up, so he began to dig deeper. Okay, hold on. Let's go back up here. Because his father had been personal manager for the state treasury for 8 years, Mr. Bruin understood how to get around in various governmental departments. The state director of the budget was on vacation, so Mr. Bruin called one of his lowest level assistants and said, "I'm working on a report for Richard, the vacation budget director, and I need all of the figures on the autonomous agency accounts, interest accounts, investments accounts." The assistant said, "Oh, you want the comprehensive annual financial report." Okay, wow. Let's go up there. This was the first time Bruin had heard of the CAFR, but he said yes, and the assistant mailed it. The comprehensive annual financial report, the CAFR, showed New Jersey had liquid investment funds, cash, of $188 billion. Common stocks worth $70 billion, $10 billion due from loans to public and private corporations, and $14 billion in insurance and company equity participation. Wow, this is incredible. The little state of New Jersey, which admitted to less than $25 billion in annual income, on its budget reported almost $300 billion in cash, great day, stocks and loans and insurance equity on its CAFR. According to Mr. Bruin, on that day, I learned the definition of syndicated organized crime. I bet you did. The scam worked something like this. Anything that was a cost or expense for public services, the traditional side of the annual service budget, such as the Department of Transportation, Health and Welfare, etc., was reported on the budget, where public taxes paid 100% of the bill for those services. That was $17 billion. However, any governmental agency that was a profit center, the Port Authority for New Jersey, the New Jersey Turnpike and investment account, etc., that general non-tax revenue was restricted by statute. Wait a minute now. You oh no, you gonna put up a statute?
Or was it returned as a bank loan to the borrower?
As a loan.
So how did the bank get the borrower's money for free?
That's how it works.
No more questions, Your Honor. All right, so there you have it. I think we've beaten that dead horse quite sufficiently, and the fraud should now be crystal clear.
Okay. After watching what we just seen involving the foreclosures and people losing their homes, and we want to deal with some solutions to the problem. What we're looking at right now is called a UCC financing statement. We want to put this thing together and keep in mind that it has all of the instructions that you're going to need to fill this thing out correctly. We've in previous videos we've dealt with the straw man in all capital letters and what it means, and we know he's the one that has all of the assets, all of control, all the property. He owns everything, and what we want to do is transfer all that he owns into the hands of the living man. Okay? And this is the statement that we're going to use. Now, if you notice right here, the most important part of this is right here, so there's absolutely no excuse. Instructions for UCC financing statement, form UCC1. And it says, please type or laser print this form. Be sure it's completely legible. Read and follow all instructions, especially instructions 1. Use of the correct name for the debtor is crucial. Fill in the form very carefully. Mistakes may have important legal consequences. If you have questions, consult an attorney. The filing office cannot send completed form or any attachments to the filing office with the requirement fee. It says items, instructions, A and B. Well, I'm not going to read all of the instructions, but here they are, attached to your UCC1 financing statement. So you don't have to call anyone. All you have to do is follow instructions that is right there on the statement itself. Okay, this is a standard UCC1 financing statement. You're well on your way to the solution to the problem you want to take, because see, everything that you do is attached to your straw man. If you are buying a home, it's going to be addressed to the straw man. If you open up a bank account, it's the straw man. It's Social Security is the straw man. Anytime you're going to court, if you go into jail, it's always the straw man, and you are going along for the ride. Well, instead of being a beneficiary, why don't we start being the grantor and assign trustees to manage your estate? And you, the man, you actually putting in the work, but when you get a job someplace, they're addressing you as a straw man. You get a paycheck, it's addressed to the straw man in all caps. So this is how to go about taking control of that and getting in a position so that we can discharge these so-called debts and all this stuff. And we're going to be getting to that in subsequent videos. But right now, we're starting with a solution to the problems of the videos that we just watched, involving people losing their homes and all of this kind of stuff here. Keep in mind, in order to get this thing done correctly and to succeed and change your life, you can contact us at newdebtelimination.com. That's newdebtelimination.com. And you can also go to tarhakadebtelimination.org. Okay, let's move on to the next document. This is a security agreement. This is security agreement, this agreement dated of this day, and it shows you what that looked like. And keep in mind on your UCC1 finances statement, it has place for you to list the secured party. And we've already covered some of what a secured party is briefly in previous videos, but of course we have detailed information and stuff. So you can just contact us at newdebtelimination.com. If you take a look at this document, this is what it looks like. So the UCC means the Uniform Commercial Code is adopted and enacted and as in effect from time to time in the state of whatever your state is. Time used them here, and we're not going to read all of this, but I want you to see what a security agreement. Now, for those of you who have your trust established, remember we talked about the irrevocable common law trust. In fact, that's the only trust that I recommend. There are all types of trusts, and of course you can put one trust into another trust. We want to make sure that we remain in the private and operate in the private. We want to learn how to maneuver and operate and move and have our being in the private. Okay? All right, so I want you to see what this thing looks like. This is a security agreement when you begin to deal with your assets and stuff, and you got your trust established. And also keep in mind that if you have a trust established, everybody in that trust, especially born inside the United States, has the potential to take advantage of their straw man, but you're just simply operating as a single trust unit. Now you have the power to fund the trust, because so often I hear people say, well, how are we going to fund the trust? Well, they had the money all along, but anyway, I had the power and the credit and all that all along, but But anyway, I just want to bring this out as a solution to the problems that we're looking at with the people in the videos that we just watched that are losing their home and going through all of this stuff. And, same thing with your child support, student loans, and all of this stuff. Okay, this is your security agreement. Okay, let's move on, y'all. Okay, everybody, you've seen the problem, and you have examined the solution to the problem, or some of the part of the solution to the problem. And so now we're going to go into the Comprehensive Financial Annual Report. It's called the CAFR, and we're going to deal with that. Keep in mind with CTFO, you also get your free website and free back office. Okay? All right. So without further ado, let's go down into the CAFR, and let's make sure that you pay close attention. And in order to deal with the CAFR successfully, you're going to have to get in touch with your city officials and demand to look at the books. But let's go and let's see how this thing here is going to play out. Hold on 1 second. All right, we got that straight. All right, y'all, let's roll. This document is the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. It's by Walter J. Bruin Jr. Now, I was told to go to this site by Mr. Jerry Day, And it states here by Mr. Bruin that as editor of the Anti-Shyster, I've seen so many unbelievable stories over the last 8 years that I've been become jaded, cynical, and worldly. There are no surprises left for me. I'm sure I've seen it all. I've thought so for several years, and generally speaking, about every 2 or 3 months, life proves me absolute comprehensive annual financial reports. And we're going to bring up Mr. Buren himself so that he can give us some background information on himself and explain to us about this thing called the CAFR. But we're going to go on to the next document, so y'all sit tight. Okay? Wow.
Government agency, just to see what they do and how they do it, can tell you they didn't get very far. Government seems to be at least as secret as any corporation, if not more so. This government secrecy goes back well before terrorism was a general concern. Our public agencies are not so public when it comes to disclosing their own conduct, their finances, their inside operations, and their productivity. Well, it turns out, just like many people and organizations that like to be secret, they do have something to hide. It's called the CAFR. The CAFR is the name for the financial accounts of any public agency. It stands for Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, and it is standard to all government agencies. Your courthouses have them, school districts have them, city, county, and state governments all have CAFRs. But up until recently, hardly anyone except government insiders have even heard of the CAFR. The hard numbers are in the CAFR. This is true reporting of all accounts, flows, and holdings. When media reports anything about public finance, this is what they should be talking about. But you may have noticed they only seem to talk about this thing called the budget. The budget is something very different. For government, the budget is not so much an accounting tool as a propaganda hallucination. A budget is a projection, a goal, a target. In accounting terms, the budget is referred to as inferior to the CAFR accounts. Suppose your county has $1 gazillion in the CAFR, but they tell you they have no budget for dog catcher. Well, that's okay. That may be exactly right. They have a bunch of money, but they have budgeted nothing for dog catcher. This community has decided that stray dogs are not a problem, so fine. That has nothing to do with any shortage of funds. It's just a budget decision. They might tell you that they don't have the money for the dog catcher, but that would be just to appease the small minority who have lost their dogs. Now say they budget $1 million for mosquito abatement. Now they've decided to go into those CAFR accounts and set aside $1 million. The media tells us the county budgeted $1 million for mosquito abatement, but they don't tell us, they don't mention the $1 gazillion remaining in the CAFR accounts from which they are dispensing the $1 million. We sit here and believe that when they spend that $1 million, there will be nothing left. They have us thinking that the budget is all there is. While we are duped into thinking government is broke, they are sitting on, in this case, nearly $1 gazillion in many special off-budget accounts, and you don't see that unless you look at the CAFR. So now what happens if mosquito abatement goes over budget and costs $2 million? Well, since you and I don't know about the CAFR and that gazillion sitting in the accounts, the nightly news comes crying to us, telling us the county has gone over budget, run out of money, and they need to raise taxes or borrow to pay the extra $1 million for the